I attended Roseville Area High School, where I was a sophomore there, and all of a sudden came up the issue of sophomore kidnap. From that moment on, we were doused in shaving cream, silly string, flour, anything you can imagine, just covered from us, and they all were just chanting at us.
Hazing. This initiation rite is quietly carried out in colleges and high schools throughout the nation. Hazing is usually harmless, but it can lead to physical and emotional pain, sometimes death.
Seeing some of my friends get beer bottles broken over their heads, and then us having to roll in the glass. And having vinegar, which is something that can make you go blind from the acid in it. Just had so much anger built up inside of me, and they had brought me down to a level of depression that was so crazy.
How do you deal with the hazards of hazing? Nikki realized the solution might be the state capitol. You find government in the nation's capital, at the state capitol, and in your hometown. You've heard about checks and balances, how the different branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, keep the system equal and even. But there's another important branch in our government that they may not mention in your textbooks: you. Young people in Minnesota have made a difference by getting involved in the political process. Their stories show that there's power in the process. Despite all the laws there are to keep kids safe, when Nikki was in high school, there were no laws against hazing. The sophomore kidnap had turned ugly, and Nikki and other teens suffered a painful hazing at the hands of their classmates.
As soon as we got out of the cars, other juniors left, so we got dropped off there with no way of escaping, because they were told if they didn't leave, they were going to get beat up because they didn't get it done worse enough to them their year. So we all got left there, and we ended up getting urinated on, our hair dyed green, vinegar poured in our eyes, beer bottles broken over our heads. We had to roll in glass from the beer bottles. Some kind of chemical was poured on us, because it was a hot and cold, burning, tingling sensation. And right before they poured the vinegar in our eyes, we were all laying in a fetal position, facing the ground, and they told us all to roll over, and I was actually the only one. I was like, no, I'm not rolling over, I have no idea what you're going to do to me. And then they started kicking and, beating me, screaming obscenities, and finally I wouldn't turn over, but they ended up pouring vinegar right over people's eyes. And then, at this time, everyone was just screaming and crying and stop and somebody help us. And I looked over and guys and girls both were just hysterically bawling.
Things got worse when Nikki's mom asked the school about what had taken place. Students harassed Nikki for breaking the silence on the hazing.
I didn't want to come forward at all. I transferred schools after the second day I came back, and I had gotten so much harassment from our house got egged, we got paintballed. We have Tivoli lights outside in our backyard. They got cut every night when we put new ones up. We had to put security in. We had security lights. Our lights would get disassembled every time. People would constantly drive by our house all hours of the night screaming obscenities at us. They'd get harassed at the malls. Anywhere, anything you can imagine. And the last straw was when I got my car keyed with the word bitch. And I said, you know what, this is enough's enough, and what else can you do to me? And so that's finally when I said, Mom, what can we do? Because I'm not gonna let them walk all over me anymore.
Nikki considered her options. Then, opportunity knocked.
Mindy Greiling, a Minnesota representative for our area, came knocking on our door one day. Just campaigning, and boy, shit, was in for an earful that day. We had kept her here for about 4 hours, and she could not believe it, because she had a son that was actually in the same school district. So then she was the one who said, well, have you ever thought about making an anti-hazing law? We were just like, oh, I don't know if that's possible for us. she said, well, you know what, now what you can do is you can, if you want to pursue it, it might take some work and effort and determination, but you know, we'll start trying to write up a bill for you, we'll get co-authors, I'll get you involved in the process. It was overwhelming, but then it also was like just giving me power in a situation, saying, I mean, even if nothing would ever happen, obviously to the people that did it to me, that I could prevent something in the future from this happening.
The thought of getting involved in state government was empowering, but also intimidating.
I thought it was all for, you know, big people in suits. You know, you're little, you look up, you're like, oh, all people walk around with their briefcases, and didn't ever think they'd ever want to listen to us.
How do you get politicians to listen?
We knew you had to have a campaign, so we made a slogan, hazing is hazardous to your health. Let's make it against the law in Minnesota. We had buttons, brochures, posters, letters. All of our letters we'd put on hot pink, hot orange, hot green paper.
Nikki also used old-fashioned political approaches.
We just go knocking on the doors. You know, do you have time to talk? Blah, blah, blah. I want you to know about our campaign. And I mean, a lot of times we had the door shut in our face because they didn't know what hazing was. And, you know, we're just a mom and a daughter. And we weren't some lobbyist, you know, for some huge company that, you know, they had to listen to because maybe somebody wouldn't vote for their bill on this. You know, we didn't have any clout like that.
The political process has always been influenced by the press, so Nikki used the media to call attention to her issue.
So they caught these two sites on videotape with infrared cameras. And so we had, with that tool, we brought that back to the legislation, and that's when we got our hearing, and that's when we, you know, taped or showed it to the education committee and said, this is what hazing is.
Not only did Nikki lobby for a new law, she helped write it. Nikki and her mother worked closely with Representative Mindy Greiling.
A lot of it was, you know, obviously over my head. I was only a sophomore at that time, and so they'd come, and me and Linda Scheid and Mindy Greiling would sit down with my mom, and we'd read over the bill word for word.
Another realization for Nikki was making a law requires compromise.
This is my bill, you know, I'm the only one that ever said anything about this. What do you, Joe Schmo, senator, know about this? You know, you've obviously never, you know, had this done to you. But then you just obviously have to give and take because, you know, you're one person and they're the whole committee that can, you know, veto your bill right out the door. So I said, okay, fine, you know, we can do this.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion.
During a legislative session, Senate and House committee hearings are an important part of the process. It's a time for elected officials to get the information they need to make decisions. It's also the time when the public can participate.
The following chain of events will give you a perspective to what the 1995 sophomore kidnapping.
During her testimony, Nikki turned the tables on politicians.
I remember when we sat down, everyone was shuffling their papers and, you know, talking to other people because their other session had just got done, and I was like, looked at my mom like, are they going to be doing this the whole time? You know, aren't they supposed to listen to us? And she thought, oh, I'm sure they'll finish, you know, one person will, you know, keep doing it, but we kept talking and talking, and all of a sudden I was just getting so irritated, just like, I'm sitting here telling you the story that means so much to me, and I have so much passion towards this, and you know, couldn't care of what, you know, what was going on. And so I just stopped, and I didn't say anything till they looked at me, and it probably took about 2 minutes of total silence in the room, and all of a sudden everyone's staring at me like, what's going on? And I'm like, are you ready to listen?
Nikki and her mother fought an uphill battle, from the night of the hazing through harassment, then the challenges found in the halls of the Capitol. But working side by side with legislators made it easier.
The whole time they were almost, you know, holding our hand through the whole process, saying, you know, this is what happens. You know, a lot of times they don't all come to the, you know, testimonies, and but, you know, they'll vote on it for what's here, and that's when we actually, you know, that day we got a vote on it, and that's when it passed. And actually we were really lucky because it got blanketed into the whole education bill, so it just got tossed in with everything so that they couldn't take it out and veto it. So that was one of the tricks that Mindy and Linda Scheid used. I mean, I have goosebumps right now. It was just like, are you serious? You know, we did this. So I remember just hugging my mom and crying, like when it came on the paper, you know, the hazing, whatever went into effect, and I was just like, we actually did something, and, you know, our whole negative situation turned into, just did a total 180-degree turn into just a positive. And I mean, how good I felt for protecting other students. I mean, I know hazing is going to go on. There's nothing that's going to make people stop. Unless one of their friends, you know, dies or gets permanently injured, that's the only reason people stop things. But now, with this, you know, law, there's consequences, and people are going to have to face up to the facts of what they did. Totally, anyone can do it.